AITA for refusing to lend my car to my sister after she promised she would pay for gas, but then got mad at me for saying no. This all started about 6 months ago. I, 28F, live in a small city, and I rely on my car for pretty much everything: work, grocery shopping, and even visiting friends. I live alone and pay for all my bills myself, including car maintenance, insurance, and gas. My younger sister, Emily, 25F, has always been a bit irresponsible with money and possessions, which is a source of stress for me because we're pretty close and I hate seeing her struggle, but I also can't keep bailing her out. A few months ago, Emily called me and asked if she could borrow my car for a weekend. She had a job interview out of town, and her own car was in the shop for repairs. She promised she would pay for the gas and even offered to take care of any minor issues that might come up while she had it. I was hesitant at first because my car is old and prone to random problems, but I also wanted to help her out. I asked her to clarify how long she would need it, and she said just Friday evening to Sunday evening. That seemed reasonable, so I agreed. On Friday, Emily came over and picked up the car. She was happy and thanked me multiple times. I felt good about helping her, even though part of me was nervous because my car has a history of overheating if driven too much or on highways. I reminded her to be careful, and she assured me she would be fine. I didn't think much more about it, trusting her. Sunday night came, and Emily returned the car. The first thing I noticed was that the gas tank was nearly empty, which immediately annoyed me because she had promised to cover that. I asked her about it, and she said, "Oh, I didn't get a chance to fill it. I figured you could do it since you're always so responsible." I was shocked. I reminded her of her promise, and she got defensive, saying that she didn't have the money right then. I was frustrated but didn't want to start a huge fight, so I just told her I would handle it but expected her to pay me back. The next week, I sent her a text asking her to reimburse me for the gas, which was about $45. She ignored it. I followed up politely 2 more times, but she never responded. A few weeks later, she came by and asked if she could borrow my car again because she had another interview, this time in a different city. I said no. I explained that I was uncomfortable lending her my car after the gas situation and because she hadn't reimbursed me. I also said I couldn't rely on her to treat my property responsibly. She got visibly upset and accused me of being selfish, saying I should help her because she's my sister and she always helps me emotionally. At first, I tried to explain that helping emotionally and lending a car are 2 very different things and that I have financial responsibilities that I can't ignore. Emily wouldn't listen and kept saying I was mean and never there for her when she needs it. I told her I cared about her, but I also had to set boundaries. She left angry and hasn't really spoken to me much since then, except for passive-aggressive texts about how families should stick together. A couple of days ago, my parents called me. They said Emily was upset that I wouldn't help her and that I should consider family first and not be so rigid. They didn't accuse me of being a bad person outright, but they implied that I was being unsupportive. I tried to explain my side, how I had lent her my car before, she didn't follow through on her promise to pay for gas, and that I can't always put her needs above my own, but my parents said that maybe I should just give her the car next time and not worry about the cost. I feel really torn. On one hand, I love my sister and I want to support her, but on the other hand, I feel like she's taking advantage of me. Lending her my car is a big deal because it's old and expensive to maintain, and I can't risk it being misused or not returned in the condition I expect. I also feel like if I give in now, she'll just continue expecting me to do favors without following through on her promises. I've tried to set clear boundaries, but it seems like that's causing a rift in our relationship, and I hate that. So, AITA for refusing to lend my car to my sister after she didn't reimburse me for the gas from the last time she borrowed it? I feel like I'm being responsible and setting boundaries, but my family seems to think I'm being harsh and unsupportive. I also wonder if I'm overreacting and should just let it go for the sake of family harmony. I've considered offering her alternative solutions, like helping her find a rental car or giving her a ride to her interview once. But I really don't want to let this turn into a pattern where she expects me to cover everything. I want to help her, but I also want to protect my own resources and not feel used. I guess I just don't know where to draw the line between being a caring sister and being taken advantage of. So, AITA for saying no. If you enjoyed the video, Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay in my house for months, even though my family thinks I'm being unkind. I, 34F, live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment that I've had for about 6 years. I enjoy my privacy, routine, and quiet life. I work from home as a software engineer, which requires long stretches of focus and a controlled environment. My younger brother, Daniel, 29M, has been dating his girlfriend, Sophie, 27F, for about a year. Sophie is nice enough, but has a history of overstepping boundaries and assuming she's entitled to space and attention wherever she goes. A few months ago, Sophie's apartment lease ended unexpectedly because the landlord decided to sell the building. She told Daniel she had nowhere to go for at least 3 months until she could find a new place. Daniel, instead of exploring temporary rentals or asking friends, immediately suggested that Sophie could move in with me. He framed it as just until she gets sorted and emphasized that I wouldn't mind because I have an extra bedroom. I was shocked. I barely know Sophie, and even though she's been dating Daniel for a year, she has never spent more than a weekend at my place. I explained to Daniel that I value my privacy and that hosting someone for months while working from home is not feasible. I suggested temporary solutions like a short-term rental, staying with mutual friends, or even hotels if necessary. Daniel brushed it off, insisting that it would be much easier for Sophie to stay with me and that I could make it work. I tried to set boundaries calmly. I told Daniel that having Sophie live with me would disrupt my work, my routine, and my personal life. I explained that even though I am happy to see her occasionally, hosting someone full-time is completely different. Daniel got frustrated and said I was being difficult and that family helps each other. I replied that helping doesn't always mean inviting someone to live in my home for months. The conflict escalated when Daniel involved our parents. They called me and said that I should support the family and help Sophie in a time of need. They reminded me that I used to live with our parents and wouldn't want her to struggle like that. I tried to explain that my apartment and work situation make it impossible to host her long-term, but they seemed unsympathetic. They suggested I could sleep in the guest room or work from a cafe to accommodate her, which I found completely unreasonable. Sophie herself contacted me, telling me that she really didn't want to inconvenience anyone, but that she was desperate and assumed I would help. She seemed shocked and upset when I firmly said no, stating that I cannot host her for months. She implied that I was unfriendly and cold, which made me feel guilty, even though I have legitimate reasons for refusing. Daniel became increasingly angry, accusing me of not being supportive of the people you love and saying that I was making Sophie feel unwelcome in the family. He argued that my apartment is bigger than Sophie's old place and that I should be able to handle it. He refused to consider any compromise and said he would take it personally if I didn't let her stay. I reached out again, tried to offer solutions that didn't involve her living with me. I suggested short-term sublets, extended stays at a nearby hotel, and even offered to help her with moving costs or covering part of a rental if finances were the issue. Daniel and Sophie rejected all these options, saying it was too inconvenient or not the same as staying with family. Things came to a head when Sophie showed up at my apartment unannounced, expecting to move in immediately. I firmly told her that she could not stay, that I had set clear boundaries, and that I would not compromise my work or personal space. Daniel called me while this was happening, yelling that I was being ridiculous and that I was hurting everyone's feelings. Sophie left, but not before sending me a text accusing me of being mean and selfish. Since then, our family gatherings have been tense. My parents hint that I should have been more generous, and Daniel avoids talking to me directly. Sophie has posted on social media, subtly implying that I treated her unfairly. I feel like I am being painted as the villain for prioritizing my personal space and responsibilities, even though I try to offer alternative help. Some friends have told me that I did the right thing because hosting someone full-time in a shared space while working from home is a legitimate boundary, and that I am not required to put my life on hold. Others in my family, however, insist that I am being unkind and that family comes first. I feel torn because I want to maintain good relationships with my brother and Sophie, but I also know that compromising my space for months would create significant stress and resentment. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend move into my apartment for months, even though my family believes I'm being unkind and unsupportive. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé live with me after he insulted my parenting. I, 34F, have a 7-year-old daughter, Emma, and I've been a single mom since she was born. My sister, Laura, 32F, recently got engaged to someone I'll call Dan, 35M. We have always been close, and when Laura got engaged, I was genuinely happy for her. She's the type of person who dives headfirst into relationships, and for the first time in years, I saw her genuinely happy and settled. A few months ago, Laura and Dan moved into their own apartment, but their lease is temporary while they renovate their future home. A week ago, they asked if Dan could stay at my place for a few days because of some issues with their temporary apartment. Something about plumbing and repairs that would make their apartment almost unlivable. They tried to frame it as just a couple of nights, but it quickly turned into almost a week of negotiations. I've always been protective of my space, and especially my daughter's environment. I told them that my home is Emma's safe place, and while I wanted to help, I wasn't comfortable with anyone staying for multiple nights. Laura was understanding, but Dan seemed frustrated and kept trying to pressure me into agreeing. Eventually, I relented and said he could stay one night, with the understanding that he would leave the next morning. When he arrived, things started off okay. We had dinner together, and everything seemed normal. But that night, Dan made some comments that really upset me. He started talking about parenting and said something along the lines of, "You really need to stop coddling her. Kids aren't meant to be wrapped in bubble wrap. She needs to learn discipline and boundaries, or she's going to grow up spoiled and weak." I was taken aback because he had never met Emma before that evening. I explained politely that I have my own parenting style, and what works for us is different. Dan didn't drop it. He continued critiquing how I raised Emma, saying that she needed stricter routines, less screen time, and that she should be encouraged to toughen up more. I tried to change the subject, but he kept insisting that he was just giving advice and that I should listen to someone who has experience with kids, even though he is none. I finally asked him to stop and reminded him that I am Emma's parent and set the rules in my home. The tension escalated. He started comparing his fiancé's family dynamics to mine and implied that Laura would never be happy living with someone like me. I felt cornered and disrespected in my own home. Emma, sensing the tension, started to get anxious, and I had to pull her into my room to calm her down. The next morning, I told Dan that his stay was over and that he needed to leave immediately. He argued, claiming that I was overreacting and that he was just trying to help. I stood firm and said that his behavior was unacceptable and that I could not allow someone who disrespected me and my parenting to stay in my home. He left, but he texted Laura saying that I was mean and controlling and that she should reconsider who she associates with. Laura was upset and tried to mediate. She said she understood my concerns, but felt that I had been harsh and that maybe I could have let him stay a little longer. I explained to her that it wasn't about being harsh. It was about protecting my daughter and my home from someone who insulted us and tried to undermine my parenting in front of my child. Laura has since expressed frustration, saying that I embarrassed her fiancé and that our relationship is now strained. I feel hurt because I did what I thought was right for my child and myself. I am now questioning whether I handled the situation appropriately. AITA for kicking out my sister's fiancé after he criticized my parenting in my home? Here's some context I feel is important. I've never had issues with Laura staying over or with friends coming over. It's specifically about someone who criticized how I parent my child. Emma is very sensitive, and I have always prioritized her emotional safety over accommodating guests. I am more than willing to support my sister, but I do not think it's unreasonable to set boundaries in my own home. Dan has never had a child and often brags about knowing better than people who are parents. I'm trying to balance family relationships with the responsibility of protecting my child. I don't want to be seen as unreasonable, but I also cannot ignore the fact that Dan's behavior felt invasive and disrespectful. I'm also feeling guilty because Laura has been upset with me since the incident. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my home after he insulted my parenting? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her behavior toward my family? I, 32F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger sister, Emma, 28F. Growing up, we were inseparable, but over the last few years, things have become strained. A few months ago, Emma got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 30M, and immediately started planning her wedding in a way that has caused tension for everyone involved. I want to make it clear that my objections are not about Mark. He seems like a decent guy, but about how Emma has been treating my family and me throughout the process. From the beginning, Emma made it very clear that she wanted a perfect wedding, and in her mind, that meant excluding anyone who didn't fit her vision. This became apparent when she started sending out her guest list. She initially told my parents and me that we were on it, but then she reconsidered and claimed there was not enough room at the venue. She said that my younger brother, Jake, 25M, and my husband, Tom, 34M, wouldn't be included because they didn't really get along with certain people from her side of the family. We tried to understand and compromise, suggesting that we could coordinate seating, but she dismissed it entirely, saying it was too complicated and that she wanted the day to be stress-free for her. A few weeks later, Emma started sending out invitations to distant cousins and friends she barely knew, while still excluding immediate family. She made a point of telling me that the seating arrangement was final and that I shouldn't be offended. I was offended, not because I expected to be treated like royalty, but because she was deliberately making my family feel unwelcome. I expressed this to her in a calm conversation, emphasizing that we understood if space was limited, but that excluding our immediate family made no sense. She accused me of being dramatic and overthinking everything, which only made me feel more disrespected. The next issue came with the bridal party. I was initially told I could be one of the bridesmaids, which I was excited about. But then, without any warning, Emma told me that she had changed her mind and asked our cousin, Brittany, to replace me. She said Brittany fits the theme better. I asked what that meant, and she just said it was about the color palette and aesthetic she wanted. It felt like a slap in the face, and I told her that publicly celebrating someone else over a family member felt hurtful. She brushed it off, saying I was being too sensitive and that she had to make tough choices for her wedding. Things escalated when she started planning a rehearsal dinner. She booked an expensive restaurant and explicitly invited her fiancé's friends and coworkers while leaving out her parents and Jake. She claimed it was a guys' night thing, but the reality was that it excluded our entire side of the family. I tried to suggest alternative plans, or at least attending part of the evening, but she insisted that it was not negotiable. By this point, it became clear that her vision of the wedding prioritized her friends and image over family bonds. I decided to approach her one more time, expressing my disappointment and asking if there was any chance to include our parents and brother in at least some of the events. Emma became defensive and yelled at me over the phone, saying that I was trying to control her wedding and that she was an adult who could make her own decisions. She even accused me of being jealous of her fiancé and implied that I was trying to ruin her happiness. I tried to stay calm, but it was impossible to reason with her at that point. After several weeks of tense messages and phone calls, I made a decision. I would not attend the wedding. I explained to my parents and Jake that attending would make us feel uncomfortable and disrespected, and that we did not want to support a day where we were deliberately excluded. I sent Emma a message saying that I could not attend, but wish her the best, and I left it at that. The fallout was immediate. Emma called me multiple times, leaving angry voicemails, accusing me of destroying our relationship and making a huge scene. She also sent a long text criticizing my husband, Tom, saying that he had encouraged my bitterness and that we were both being selfish. Our parents tried to mediate, but even they admitted that Emma was being stubborn and defensive. Some extended family members have taken him aside, saying that weddings are about the bride's vision and that I should just get over it. Others have quietly supported me, acknowledging that her behavior has been exclusionary and hurtful. I feel torn because part of me wishes I could attend and celebrate Emma's marriage, but another part of me feels that showing up would validate her actions and compromise my self-respect. Since I refuse to attend, Emma has stopped speaking to me, and social media has become a minefield. She posted photos of the wedding, tagging friends and distant family, but not our immediate family. My parents are sad and frustrated. Jake is angry, and I feel like I'm in a no-win situation. I've tried to set boundaries, but Emma views any boundary as a personal attack. I've reflected on this a lot and consider going to counseling to process the family dynamics, but the tension is still high. My main question is this: AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she deliberately excluded my immediate family and treated us disrespectfully during the planning? I don't want to be seen as petty or spiteful, but I also can't ignore the way she's treated us. I understand that weddings are important and that everyone wants their day to be perfect. But at what point does family loyalty outweigh someone's desire for aesthetic perfection or selective socializing? I feel that my absence is a statement about boundaries and self-respect, not a rejection of Emma herself. Yet she has interpreted it as betrayal. So Reddit, AITA for standing my ground and refusing to attend my sister's wedding, even though it has caused a rift in our family? Or should I have swallowed my feelings and gone to keep the peace, even if it meant silently enduring exclusion and disrespect? AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay in my house for an indefinite period, even though she says she has nowhere else to go. I, 32F, live in a 3-bedroom townhouse in a suburban area. I own the house and live with my partner, Alex, 34M, and our dog. Our space is comfortable for the two of us and our lifestyle, but we don't have the capacity for long-term guests. We have a routine that revolves around our work schedules, household chores, and personal time. We value our privacy and stability, and we've made it clear to family that extended stays aren't feasible in our home. My cousin, Emily, 29F, has had a difficult year. She recently lost her apartment due to financial issues and has been couch surfing with friends. She called me last month, saying she had no stable place to stay and asked if she could move in temporarily while she gets back on her feet. At first, I was sympathetic, but I hesitated because temporary, in Emily's case, has historically meant months, sometimes over half a year, based on past experiences with other family members and friends. I knew that allowing her to move in could seriously disrupt our routines and put a strain on our relationship. I explained to Emily that while I wanted to help, I couldn't accommodate her in our home for an indefinite period. I offered alternatives, such as helping her find a short-term rental, contributing to a security deposit, or assisting her in finding a cheap sublet. She reacted poorly, insisting that living with us would be much easier and more practical because we are family. She told me she didn't want to be a burden to anyone else, but implied that we were the most logical choice since we have the space. When I tried to set boundaries, she became upset. She said that my refusal made her feel unloved and that family should always help each other, no matter the inconvenience. She brought up past times when our parents had let her stay with them or other relatives for extended periods. I reminded her that my living situation is very different. I work from home, have a specific schedule, and cannot risk months of disruption. She accused me of not caring about family and being selfish. The situation worsened when my aunt and uncle found out about the request. They called me, expressing disappointment that I was turning her away and implying that I should be more accommodating. They suggested that if I truly cared about family, I would let her move in and work around her schedules. I tried explaining calmly that hosting someone full-time for an extended period is not feasible and that I had offered practical alternatives, but they dismissed these solutions as not the same as living with family. Emily continued to pressure me. She suggested moving in for just a week to try it out, promising to be quiet and helpful, but I refused. I explained that even a short trial period would still disrupt our work and routines, and that I couldn't risk setting a precedent that might encourage her to overstay. She responded angrily, saying I was heartless and that she didn't expect this from family. To make matters worse, Emily posted on social media about her situation, mentioning that some family members refused to help and implying that I was unsupportive. Mutual friends started asking me why I wasn't letting her stay, which added social pressure. My parents also expressed frustration, telling me I should have found a way to accommodate her and that my refusal might damage our family relationship. I feel stuck. I want to support Emily and maintain a positive relationship, but I also have responsibilities to my partner, our dog, and my own mental health. Hosting someone indefinitely would be highly stressful, and I worry would lead to resentment, arguments, or even forcing her out in a way that would damage our bond anyway. Several friends have told me I did the right thing, pointing out that setting boundaries is healthy and that offering alternative help is better than putting myself in a situation that could cause conflict. However, my family is still upset, claiming I lack compassion and that I should be putting family first. I feel guilty because Emily genuinely needs support, but I also feel justified in protecting my household and my routines. I have offered to help her financially, look for rentals, and support her in any way I can that doesn't involve her living with us. She has rejected all these offers, insisting that living together is the only practical solution. My family continues to pressure me, saying I am letting her down and creating unnecessary tension. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay in my house for an indefinite period, even though she claims she has nowhere else to go and my family thinks I'm being unkind. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in with me after a heated family argument. I, 29F, live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the city, and I've always been the type to enjoy my personal space. I work from home, so having a quiet environment is essential, and I've built a pretty structured routine around that. My sister, Claire, 31F, is a free spirit, very outgoing, and loves having people around. We've always had a good relationship, though we differ in how we handle boundaries. Recently, however, things escalated, and I'm not sure if I overreacted. About 6 months ago, Claire started dating a guy named Ethan, 32M. I met him a few times, and he seemed okay at first, but I noticed he was always very entitled in small ways. For instance, when he came over for family dinners, he expected things to be rearranged or tailored to him, like my cooking preferences or my schedule, without asking. I brushed it off, thinking it was normal new relationship behavior. Fast forward to last week. Claire called me in tears, saying that her apartment had a sudden rodent infestation and that the landlord was slow to fix it. She asked if Ethan could stay with me temporarily, just until she could sort things out. I paused because my apartment is small, I live alone, and I work from home. I explained that having another adult, let alone two, in my space for an indefinite period would be difficult. Claire insisted, saying it would only be a couple of weeks, and Ethan could keep to himself and not interfere with my routine. I reluctantly agreed to discuss it further, though I made it clear I wasn't promising anything. The next day, Claire came over with Ethan. I reminded them that I had a work meeting schedule and personal obligations, and asked them to respect that. Ethan immediately started asking if he could rearrange the living room furniture for better feng shui, and requested I turn my spare bedroom into a temporary office for him. I reminded him I needed that space for work, and that he could use the couch or the dining table instead. He looked visibly annoyed, but didn't argue at that moment. Claire tried to mediate, saying he was just trying to make things comfortable. I told them that comfort didn't trump my work and living arrangements. Over the next few days, Ethan's behavior became increasingly intrusive. He would eat my food without asking, leave dirty dishes in the sink, and use my bathroom for extended periods. He also started commenting on how stale my apartment felt and suggested a complete redecorating, which I found incredibly disrespectful. I calmly reminded him that this was my home, not a hotel or a design project. He laughed it off and said he was just trying to help, which irritated me further. The breaking point came one evening when I had an important conference call with clients. I work in consulting, and this meeting could make or break a deal. I told Ethan he couldn't use the living room during my call and that he needed to stay quiet. He refused, saying he had to make a phone call for work himself, and implied I was being unreasonable. I raised my voice and told him he couldn't have priority over me in my own apartment. Claire intervened, trying to calm things down, and suggested I should just let him be for a few minutes. I told her no. This was my professional livelihood we were talking about. Ethan stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door. Claire followed him, clearly frustrated. After that incident, Claire came back alone and tried to guilt me. She said I was being cold and selfish for not helping her during a crisis, and that Ethan's stay was temporary. I explained that temporary didn't justify the complete lack of respect for boundaries. I also pointed out that I had suggested alternative solutions, like Claire staying with a friend or finding a short-term rental, but she was insistent on coming to me. She said that I was overreacting and that families should help each other. I told her that helping doesn't mean sacrificing my personal space or tolerating someone who disrespects my home. Claire left after a long argument, saying she might reconsider her relationship with me if I continued being so rigid. I feel hurt because I thought our family bond meant she would respect my boundaries, and I also feel frustrated that Ethan apparently assumed he had a right to my space. On one hand, I can see that they were in a difficult situation and might have expected support. On the other hand, I feel like I have a right to protect my home and my work environment. After that weekend, I haven't spoken much to Claire. She has sent a few messages accusing me of being unsympathetic, and Ethan hasn't contacted me again. Some friends of mine say I should have just let them crash for a few days, while others agree that I was right to enforce boundaries. I'm starting to feel conflicted because I don't want to ruin my relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to feel like my home is anyone else's temporary entitlement. So AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in with me, and for enforcing strict boundaries that led to a family fight. I feel like I was just protecting my personal space and professional responsibilities, but now I'm worried that I've damaged my relationship with Claire. I haven't told anyone else in my family yet because I want to understand if I really overreacted or if my expectations were reasonable. I know families often clash over boundaries, but this feels like a particularly tense situation because it involved both my sister and her partner. I'm torn between standing firm and trying to repair the relationship. I value Claire deeply, and I don't want to lose her over this, but I also feel that bending my rules in this way would set a precedent I'm not comfortable with. I guess the bigger question is, how do you help family in an emergency without sacrificing your own mental health and personal space? AITA here. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after she betrayed my trust. I, 32F, have always had a close relationship with my younger sister, Lisa, 28F. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing everything from clothes to secrets. Our parents passed away when Lisa was 19 and I was 23, so I've always felt a strong responsibility to support her. I've helped her financially when she struggled with rent and tuition, and emotionally through her many breakups and career changes. A few years ago, Lisa moved to a different city for a job opportunity. She was excited but nervous about living on her own, and I was happy to help her set up her new apartment and get settled. Over time, our communication remained strong. We'd video call several times a week and visit each other on holidays. Things started to shift last year. Lisa got into a relationship with a guy named Mark. At first, I liked him, but soon I noticed that she was changing. She became secretive and dismissive about her life, avoiding calls and messages. I chalked it up to her being in love and giving her space. The tipping point came when I discovered something that completely shattered my trust. I was helping Lisa with her finances because she was moving apartments again, and I logged into the shared document we use for budgeting. That's when I saw that she had taken out a significant portion of money from a joint savings account we had for emergencies. This wasn't an account she had access to without my knowledge, but somehow she had managed to transfer the funds to her personal account. When I confronted her, she admitted to doing it but said it was just a temporary loan because Mark wanted to invest in some business venture. She promised to pay it back, but she never did. I was furious. This wasn't just about money, it was about trust. We've always shared everything openly, and for her to do this behind my back felt like a complete betrayal. I told her I couldn't just ignore it and that she needed to return the money immediately. She apologized, but it felt hollow. I also started noticing other small things. She would cancel plans last minute without explanation, lie about small things like why she couldn't attend family events, and generally act as though my feelings didn't matter. Fast forward a few months, Lisa lost her job due to the company downsizing. She called me, panicked, and asked if she could move back in with me temporarily until she got back on her feet. I told her that I needed time to think about it, because after the money incident, my trust in her was severely damaged. She started pressuring me, telling me that I was being unreasonable and that she had nowhere else to go. I reminded her that she had burned bridges before and that this wasn't just about being financially stable. It was about respecting boundaries and honesty. Things escalated when she tried to guilt-trip me. She said that I was being a bad sister for refusing to help her and that our parents would be disappointed in me for not supporting her. I tried to remain calm, explaining that supporting someone doesn't mean tolerating betrayal or manipulation. I also suggested alternative options. I helped her research short-term rentals, offered to connect her with job placement resources, and even offered a small financial loan under strict conditions if she promised to adhere to them. She refused all of it and started telling mutual friends that I was being cruel and selfish. Some friends agreed with her, saying that families should always help each other, while others sided with me, saying that boundaries and trust are equally important in family relationships. At this point, our relationship is strained. Lisa has been staying in a hotel and trying to rebuild her life independently, but I still feel guilty sometimes. I miss the closeness we once had, and a part of me wants to forgive her and let her move back in, but another part of me knows that doing so would be ignoring the serious breach of trust that happened. I also worry that if I let her back, the pattern will repeat and I'll end up hurt again. I've considered counseling or mediated conversation to repair our relationship, but Lisa refuses to participate, insisting that I just let her move back in. I know I've offered help in other forms, and I feel like I'm doing my best to support her without compromising my own boundaries, but the constant pressure and guilt-tripping make me second-guess myself. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after she betrayed my trust? I feel like I'm trying to balance compassion with self-respect, but the situation has become a minefield of emotions and conflicting opinions from friends and family. I want to help her succeed and be happy, but I also can't ignore the fact that she actively broke my trust in a significant way. I'm open to suggestions on how to navigate this without completely destroying our relationship or compromising my own well-being. AITA for refusing to forgive my sister for ruining my wedding because of her jealousy? I, 32F, have been planning my wedding for almost 2 years. I wanted everything to be perfect, from the venue to the flowers to the seating arrangement. My sister, Emily, 29F, has always had a competitive streak, especially when it comes to me. Growing up, she would always try to outdo me in school, in social situations, and even in our parents' eyes. I thought we had moved past some of that, but apparently not. A few months before the wedding, Emily started making passive-aggressive comments about my fiancé, Dan, 34M. She said things like, "Are you sure he's good enough for you?" Or, "I hope you're not making a mistake." I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just nervousness about me moving on with my life and not living at home anymore. I even asked my parents to talk to her, but they brushed it off, saying she was just joking. The week of the wedding, Emily kept hinting that she might have some big surprise for everyone. I asked her repeatedly to clarify what she meant, but she would just smile and say, "You'll see." I started feeling uneasy, but I tried to push the feeling aside because I wanted to focus on my big day. On the day of the wedding, everything was going well. The ceremony went smoothly, the decorations were beautiful, and the guests seemed happy. Then, during the reception, Emily made her move. She had somehow managed to get access to the catering schedule and substituted some of the food with extremely spicy dishes and a few that I'm allergic to. She knew that I have a mild shellfish allergy, and she put a shrimp dish in my tasting plate, knowing I would be served at first. I immediately started feeling my throat tighten and my skin itch. My husband and the wedding coordinator helped me get medical attention, but the situation caused a huge scene. Guests were panicking, and I could barely enjoy the rest of the evening. On top of that, Emily went around telling guests that my wedding was staged and that I was marrying Dan for his money. Some of my relatives confronted me, and a few left early because they didn't want to be part of what Emily was claiming. It felt like she had single-handedly ruined months of planning and my entire dream wedding. The day after the wedding, I told Emily she had crossed a line and that I could not forgive her for what she had done. She claimed she was just joking and that I needed to lighten up. I explained to her that what she did could have caused serious health issues and that spreading lies about my marriage was unacceptable. She shrugged it off and said she didn't mean to ruin anything and that I was overreacting. My parents are upset with me because I'm refusing to speak to Emily, but I honestly can't see how I can trust her again. She has never apologized sincerely and doesn't seem to understand the gravity of her actions. Dan is fully supportive and believes that I did nothing wrong in cutting her off, but some family members are pressuring me to forgive her for the sake of family. I feel torn because part of me wants to salvage our relationship, but another part of me feels that what she did was unforgivable. This isn't just a case of sibling rivalry. She intentionally caused harm and embarrassment on one of the most important days of my life. I have no interest in attending her future events or inviting her to mine unless she shows genuine remorse, which, so far, she hasn't. I've tried talking to mutual friends to understand their perspective, and most of them agree that Emily went way too far, but they also say I should consider the long-term consequences of estranging her. I just don't know if a person capable of this kind of behavior can ever be trusted again. So, AITA for refusing to forgive my sister for her actions at my wedding and cutting off contact with her indefinitely. I want people to understand that this isn't a small argument or typical sibling drama. Emily's actions could have had serious health consequences and completely tarnish my wedding day. I feel justified in my anger and hurt, but I also feel the weight of being labeled the mean sister for holding her accountable. I'm looking for honest opinions on whether I should reconsider my stance or if I'm right to protect myself from someone who clearly cannot respect me or my life choices. Has anyone ever dealt with a sibling intentionally sabotaging a life event? How did you handle it? And did forgiveness ever feel possible afterward? I'm willing to listen to perspectives that might challenge my position, but I need to know if standing my ground is unreasonable in the eyes of others. I feel like my wedding day should have been filled with joy, not stress, fear, and humiliation. I just don't understand how a family member could think it's acceptable to act this way. I know cutting ties is extreme, but after seeing what she's capable of, I honestly fear future events could end up even worse if I let my guard down. I feel like setting firm boundaries is the only way to protect myself and my husband. If anyone thinks I should forgive her, I need to understand what kind of apology or action could possibly make up for deliberately endangering me and trying to ruin my special day. I can't imagine any words being enough. I'm trying to figure out whether I'm being too rigid or if protecting my peace and mental health is more important than keeping up appearances for my family. I just wish I had a normal sibling relationship, but I'm starting to realize that may never be possible, and maybe it's okay to accept that and move on with my life without her. So, AITA for drawing a hard line and refusing to forgive my sister for this? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my fiance's mother control our wedding planning, even though my fiance wants to keep her happy. I, 30F, am engaged to my fiance, Ryan, 32M, and we've been planning our wedding for about 6 months. From the beginning, I wanted a wedding that reflects both of our personalities and our relationship. Ryan and I agreed on a mid-sized venue, about 120 guests, and a casual but elegant vibe. I come from a family that values personal expression and creativity, and I wanted our wedding to feel intimate and relaxed, while still celebrating with our friends and family. The problem is Ryan's mother, Karen, 58F. She has been extremely involved from the start, insisting that she needs to help make the wedding perfect and that certain elements are non-negotiable. At first, I tried to compromise, thinking her input could be helpful, but it quickly became clear that she wanted to control almost every aspect of the wedding, from the color scheme to the seating arrangements to the menu. She even suggested replacing our chosen caterer with one she preferred, claiming that our choice was not classy enough. I explained politely that while I appreciated her suggestions, the wedding was ours to plan and that we had already made decisions we felt strongly about. Karen dismissed this, saying that Ryan and I were being unreasonable and that we needed to respect her experience with weddings, having planned many herself over the years. She also said that she wanted the final say on certain things because she was financially contributing a portion of the wedding costs. This became particularly tense when she started suggesting changes to the guest list. Ryan's childhood friends were on the list, but Karen insisted that distant relatives and people she liked personally must be invited, regardless of our wishes. When I refused, she told Ryan that I was being difficult and that he should stand up to me and respect his family. Ryan is generally very supportive, but he also struggles with confrontation and wants to keep his mother happy. He began asking me to consider her feelings and see it from her perspective, which made me feel like I was being blamed for the tension. The situation escalated with the seating chart. Karen demanded that she be able to arrange the table placements for her side of the family, including her friends, who are not very familiar with anyone else attending. I refused because I wanted to integrate both sides fairly and ensure that guests would enjoy sitting with people they knew and could interact with comfortably. Karen became angry, calling me controlling and ungrateful, and threatened to pull her financial contribution if we didn't follow her instructions. I tried to compromise by asking her to give suggestions that we could consider, but she wanted full authority. When I explained that our wedding should be about Ryan and me, and that taking complete control was not acceptable, she accused me of ignoring family values and trying to alienate her from her son. Ryan became frustrated because he didn't want to upset his mother, and I became frustrated because I felt like our autonomy was being completely disregarded. Another conflict arose over the wedding music. We had chosen a DJ and created a playlist of songs that are meaningful to us. Karen insisted that she provide her own list of songs, including some that are not appropriate for a wedding or clash with our style. When I said no, she said that she was funding part of the wedding and deserves to have her favorites played, and suggested that she might step back from helping financially if we didn't comply. I have tried repeatedly to explain that we are grateful for her help, but that the wedding needs to reflect our tastes, not just hers. I suggested compromises, like including one of her favorite songs in the playlist or offering her input on decorations in a limited way, but she rejects partial compromises and demands complete control. Over specific areas, Ryan is stuck in the middle. He wants to keep his mother happy, and he also wants our wedding to reflect us as a couple. I have told him that I am willing to listen to her input, but I will not let her dictate our choices. This has caused arguments between us, as he fears upsetting her and potentially losing her support. Karen continues to pressure both of us, implying that I am selfish and uncaring, and she has even hinted that she might withdraw from participating in the ceremony entirely. My own parents and friends have been supportive, saying that it is reasonable to maintain boundaries with in-laws when planning a wedding. They stress that it is our day, not the parents' day. However, I feel guilty because I know Karen genuinely wants to help. I don't want Ryan to feel like he has to choose between me and his mother. The tension is escalating, and every planning session now involves stress and anxiety rather than enjoyment. I have offered solutions that respect her involvement while keeping our autonomy, but she refuses to compromise. Ryan keeps reminding me that he wants his mother to feel included, which makes me feel like I'm being unreasonable for insisting on boundaries. I am at a loss for how to proceed without causing a major conflict or making anyone feel excluded. So, AITA for refusing to let my fiancé's mother control our wedding planning, even though my fiancé wants to keep her happy and she is contributing financially. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move into my house after she got pregnant. I, 28F, have lived in a small town for most of my life and currently rent a 2-bedroom apartment that I absolutely love. I live alone, have a steady job as a graphic designer, and my routine is fairly quiet and predictable. My younger sister, Emily, 25F, recently announced that she is pregnant, and I was genuinely happy for her. She's always wanted a family, and I thought this could be an exciting time for her. However, the situation quickly turned complicated. Emily has been dating her boyfriend, Mark, 27M, for about 2 years. I met him a few times and found him polite enough, though I didn't feel like we had a strong connection. He has a history of moving frequently due to work instability, and he tends to spend money recklessly. He also hasn't held a full-time job consistently in the past couple of years, which I know Emily is aware of. After Emily told me about her pregnancy, she also mentioned that she and Mark were considering living together. She asked if it would be okay for Mark to stay with me temporarily while they figured out their housing situation. My apartment is small, barely big enough for myself, and I work from home, which makes space and privacy really important. I told her that I couldn't accommodate him long-term, but maybe he could stay for a night or two in an emergency. I made it clear that this was not an invitation for him to move in indefinitely. Emily didn't seem happy with my response, but I assumed she would respect my boundaries. A week later, she called me crying, saying she and Mark had a disagreement and he didn't have anywhere to go. She asked again if he could stay with me for a few weeks until they figured something out. I told her, again, that my apartment simply isn't suited for that. I explained that I work from home, I barely have space for myself, and that having an extra adult for weeks would disrupt my work, my sleep schedule, and my mental health. Emily started pleading, saying I didn't understand how hard it was for them. She claimed that because I didn't offer my apartment, I was being selfish and that she couldn't believe I would prioritize my comfort over family. I tried to explain that helping doesn't always mean giving up my home for weeks at a time, and that I could help in other ways like giving her money for a hotel, helping her search for apartments, or even babysitting once the baby was born, but she wasn't receptive. Mark eventually showed up at my apartment without asking, claiming he just needed a place to sleep for tonight. I was shocked and told him firmly that this was not okay. I asked him to leave immediately. He tried to argue that Emily said it was fine, but I told him that my consent is required and that he cannot assume he can stay just because he's family by association. He finally left, but Emily called me afterward in tears again, saying that I had humiliated her and that Mark now felt unwelcome everywhere. Things escalated further when Emily told our parents what happened. They called me and said I should have helped family in need, and that I was being cold by not letting Mark stay. I tried to explain my side, emphasizing that my apartment isn't suited for an extra person long-term and that I've offered other ways to help, but they seemed unconvinced. My mother even suggested I just suck it up because it's family, which frustrated me. Emily and Mark have since found another temporary place, but they both keep bringing up the incident and hint that I'm selfish for not bending. I feel like I have the right to set boundaries in my own home, but Emily keeps guilt-tripping me, and my parents seem to side with her. I've even caught myself feeling anxious every time my phone rings, afraid it's her asking for something else. I don't mind helping them financially, assisting with moving, or being a support system for Emily and the baby, but I feel that opening my home to Mark indefinitely would be unfair to me and would cause a lot of stress. Emily has accused me of being unsupportive and even implied that my refusal makes me a bad sister. I keep trying to explain that supporting someone doesn't always mean providing shelter, but she doesn't seem to get it. I also worry that if I had said yes, it would have set a precedent where Mark assumes he can impose on my space whenever he wants. I have a small apartment, and adding another adult, even temporarily, would strain finances, privacy, and my mental health. My work-from-home setup also wouldn't allow me to focus properly with someone else constantly around. After the whole situation, I started wondering if I really am being unreasonable. Should I have let him stay? I genuinely want to help Emily and be a supportive sister, but I also don't want to feel like my home is not my sanctuary. Emily and Mark seem to think that family obligation overrides personal boundaries, but I'm not sure that's true. I feel like I'm being made out to be the villain just because I value my privacy and mental well-being. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move into my house, even temporarily, despite her pregnancy? My parents and sister seem to think I am, but I truly believe I am just setting healthy boundaries. I need an outside perspective to see if I'm overreacting or if I have a legitimate reason to say no. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a decades-old family feud. I, 34 am, have been in a complicated relationship with my family for most of my adult life. Growing up, my younger sister, Lisa, 29F, was always the favorite. My parents would consistently prioritize her needs and achievements, while I was often overlooked or criticized for even small things. While I tried to shrug it off, it left a lingering resentment that I've struggled to completely let go of. Over time, I moved out, got my own life, and only kept minimal contact with my parents and sister. Fast forward to last year, Lisa got engaged to a man named Eric, 32M. Initially, I was happy for her from a distance, but as the wedding plans started to become more public, I began noticing the pattern that had always frustrated me. Lisa and Eric seemed to want everyone to revolve around them, while expecting me to just show up and smile. For instance, they asked me to help with decorations, even though they had assigned all of the important roles to other family members and friends, roles that were supposedly more deserving. When I expressed concern that I didn't feel comfortable with the level of involvement expected, Lisa brushed it off and said I was being dramatic and making it about me again. The real breaking point came a few months ago when they sent out the wedding invitation. It included a detailed seating chart, which specifically put me at a table in a corner with distant cousins I barely knew, far away from my parents and my other siblings, even though my parents were seated at the head table. When I asked why I was placed there, Lisa said it was because you've always been awkward at family gatherings. I tried to let it go, but it felt like a deliberate slight. Around this time, my parents also started pushing me to attend, reminding me that family comes first and that Lisa had only one day in her life to feel special. While I understood that perspective, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being asked to ignore years of hurt and be publicly humiliated for the sake of appearances. I decided to confront my sister. I explained how I felt, how I've often felt excluded, belittled, and unappreciated by the family, and how being placed in that corner at her wedding made me feel like I was still treated as less than. I also mentioned that I had no desire to be a prop for a day that she would spend being celebrated, while I felt invisible. She reacted angrily. She accused me of holding grudges, of being selfish, and of trying to sabotage her wedding. She even suggested that if I didn't attend, our relationship might be permanently damaged. I discussed this with my parents, hoping for support, but they told me I needed to get over the past and be there for your sister no matter what. My extended family also weighed in, telling me that it's just one day and that I should prioritize family harmony over my own feelings. After a lot of reflection, I made a decision. I told Lisa, Eric, and my parents that I would not attend the wedding. I explained that it wasn't a decision I made lightly, but that I couldn't participate in an event where I felt deliberately marginalized and disrespected. I offered to celebrate with her privately before or after the wedding, or to contribute in a way that felt more meaningful to me, but not attend the ceremony itself. The reactions were immediate and dramatic. Lisa accused me of being cruel and selfish. My parents were disappointed and hurt, and some extended family members openly criticized me for causing tension. Lisa blocked me on social media and hasn't spoken to me since. My parents are still trying to mediate, but they seem more frustrated with me than understanding. A few friends have told me I made the right choice by prioritizing my mental health and boundaries. Others, however, have asked if I overreacted, pointing out that it's just one day and I might regret missing a big family milestone. I understand their perspective, but I can't shake the feeling that attending would feel like betraying myself and validating years of hurt. I also want to clarify that I have no intention of turning this into a permanent feud. I'm open to rebuilding relationships in a healthy way, but I can't force myself to participate in situations where I feel invisible or disrespected. The tricky part is that this decision has already caused a massive family rift, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm the unreasonable one. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I feel marginalized and hurt by long-standing family dynamics, even though it's a significant event in her life. AITA for refusing to let my sister's children stay with me for an extended period, even though she claims she has no other options. I, 36F, live alone in a 3-bedroom townhouse in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I value my independence and routine, especially since I work from home as a freelance editor. My days are structured, and I rely on my quiet environment to meet deadlines and maintain focus. My sister, Rachel, 33F, has 3 children, Ella, 10F, Max, 8M, and Sophie, 6F. She and her husband have had some financial difficulties lately, which have forced them to move multiple times over the past year. A few weeks ago, she called me in a panic, saying that their apartment lease ended suddenly and that they had no immediate place to go. She asked if her children could stay with me temporarily while she and her husband figured things out. I was taken aback. I love my nieces and nephew, but hosting 3 children full-time is a huge commitment, especially since I don't have prior experience caring for children in such an intensive capacity. I explained that while I would love to help, my home and work situation were not set up for long-term childcare. I offered alternatives, such as helping her find a short-term rental, contributing to a hotel stay for a few nights, or connecting her with family friends who might be able to take them temporarily. Rachel was frustrated by this and insisted that staying with me was the only viable solution. I tried to reason with her. I told her that even a temporary stay could end up lasting months, as had happened before when other family members or friends helped in similar situations. I also pointed out that her children are used to specific routines, and disrupting those routines in my home could be stressful for them and for me. Rachel accused me of being selfish and said I don't care about family, implying that my refusal was a moral failing rather than a practical concern. The situation escalated when Rachel involved our parents. They called me separately, suggesting that I should step up for family and help my nieces and nephew in their time of need. They framed it as a moral obligation, arguing that family should always support each other. I explained that I am willing to help in ways that don't involve hosting them in my home, but they dismissed those suggestions as insufficient. They implied that my refusal made me uncaring and unkind. Rachel's husband suggested that I could at least host the children for a week or 2, arguing that even a short stay would give them stability while they found new housing. I told him that even a short-term arrangement would be very challenging given my work schedule and the limited space in my townhouse. He argued that it wasn't fair to make the children suffer just because I didn't want the inconvenience. Things got worse when Rachel sent me texts pressuring me, saying that she didn't know what else to do and that my refusal was forcing her hand. She implied that I was choosing comfort over family and that the children would resent me for not helping them. I responded firmly but politely, reiterating my boundaries and offering to help financially or with logistical support to find a temporary solution. She replied that financial help is not the same as giving them a home and accused me of being cold and uncaring. I began to feel intense pressure from multiple sides. My parents continued to check in, subtly guilt-tripping me, and Rachel continued to call and text, insisting that I was being unreasonable. Some friends have told me that I am right to maintain boundaries, emphasizing that offering alternative support is valid and that hosting children full-time in my situation would be highly disruptive. Others, however, suggested that family comes first and that I should find a way to accommodate them, at least for a short period. I'm also worried about the impact on my relationship with the children. I love them and want to spend time with them, but I'm concerned that hosting them in a chaotic situation could create resentment, stress, and potential conflict. I have offered to babysit a few hours a week, take them for day trips, and provide support in ways that don't require them to live in my home. But Rachel feels these gestures are inadequate. The tension has affected my relationship with my sister and my parents. I feel guilty because I know her family is struggling, but I also know that compromising my work, mental health, and personal space could have long-term consequences for me and potentially strain my relationship with the children. I am caught between wanting to be a supportive family member and maintaining boundaries that are necessary for my well-being. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's children stay in my home for an extended period, even though she claims she has no other options and my family believes I am being unkind. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding because of how she treated me growing up. So, this is going to be a long one, but I need to get it all out. I'm 28F, and my sister, 30F, is getting married in about 6 months. She's been with her fiancé for 7 years, and honestly, they seem happy. The problem is that my family is extremely traditional, and there's this unspoken expectation that I, as the younger sibling, will contribute financially to the wedding. In my culture, it's typical for siblings to help pay for either the venue, the catering, or sometimes even the dress and makeup for the bride, depending on how close the family is. Growing up, my sister and I had a very strained relationship. I was the golden child in school, and she was always compared to me. Anytime I achieved something, she would act like it didn't matter, or she would tell my parents I was showing off. When she had achievements, my parents focused so much on mine that she often felt invisible. But it wasn't just parental attention. She was actively mean to me in ways that I didn't understand at the time. She would sabotage my projects, hide my things, or spread rumors about me to my friends and neighbors. She's a very charming person outwardly, so most people thought she was sweet, but at home, she could be cruel. Despite all of this, I tried to maintain a relationship with her. I helped her with homework when we were kids, stood up for her when our parents were unfair, and even defended her in school fights when I could have just stayed out of it. But she never really reciprocated. Even as adults, she's dismissive of my feelings and tends to gaslight situations. For example, last year, I told her I was uncomfortable with a joke she made about my career, and she said I was too sensitive and laughed about it with our parents. It hurt, but I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting. So now the wedding situation. My parents and extended family have made it clear that I am expected to contribute financially. When I told my sister I wasn't planning to pay, she was shocked. She said that I was being selfish and that this was a once-in-a-lifetime event for her. She even went so far as to say that if I didn't pay, she wouldn't consider me part of the wedding party. My parents are also pressuring me, saying that it's family duty and that I should get over the past. Here's the thing. I genuinely want to celebrate her wedding and be there for her, but I have boundaries. My finances are not terrible, but I'm saving for a house, and I just can't justify spending thousands of dollars on someone who treated me poorly for my entire life. I explained this calmly to my parents and my sister, emphasizing that I love her and want to be there for the big day, but I cannot financially support something that feels like it's built on past resentments that have never been acknowledged. The family reaction has been dramatic. My sister cried and said I was ruining her wedding and that I was letting the whole family down. My parents said I was being petty and that I should put aside grudges. My cousins are divided. Some agree with me that it's unreasonable to demand such a financial contribution from a sibling, while others think I'm heartless. I've even received some judgmental messages on social media from distant relatives calling me ungrateful and selfish. I try to find a middle ground. I offered to help in non-financial ways. I could help with wedding planning, DIY decorations, logistics, or even give a small, meaningful gift instead of a huge financial contribution. My sister refused these alternatives, saying that it wouldn't be enough and that she needed money, not help. The worst part is the emotional manipulation. She's reminding me of all the ways I owe her because I didn't always appreciate her growing up, claiming that I was mean or dismissive to her as a kid, which, honestly, I was not, at least not intentionally. I tried to ignore it, but it's wearing me down because she keeps framing the situation as if my refusal to pay is a moral failing, not a boundary. I've spoken to a few friends about this, and most of them think I'm right to set boundaries. They said that helping financially should come from a place of love and desire, not obligation, especially given our complicated history. One friend even pointed out that contributing could actually reinforce the unhealthy dynamic between us because it's rewarding her manipulation with money. I'm worried about being ostracized from the family, but I feel like if I give in now, it will set a precedent that my boundaries don't matter. My sister keeps saying that she can't believe I'd choose money over family, which hurts because this isn't about money. It's about respect and recognition of past harm. I don't want to walk away from the wedding completely, but I'm not sure how to navigate this without being labeled the villain. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding even though my family expects me to. I want to be there to support her emotionally, but I cannot justify financially enabling someone who has consistently treated me poorly. Has anyone here been in a similar situation? I feel trapped between wanting to honor family tradition and protecting my own mental health. How can I celebrate her wedding without compromising my boundaries or being vilified for it? AITA for refusing to let my brother move into my apartment for an indefinite period, even though he claims he has nowhere else to go. I, 35F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a city where rent is expensive and space is limited. I live alone with my dog and have a structured routine because I work from home as a content writer. My apartment is cozy and comfortable for me, but it doesn't have room for long-term guests. I've always valued my privacy and stability, and I've worked hard to maintain a home environment that allows me to focus on work and personal life. My younger brother, Jason, 30M, recently lost his apartment due to financial issues. He called me a few weeks ago, saying that he had nowhere to stay and asked if he could move in temporarily while he figured things out. I was sympathetic but hesitant because I've had experiences with friends and other relatives where temporary ended up being months or even longer. I explained that I might be able to help him find a short-term rental, a sublet, or even contribute financially to a hotel stay for a few nights, but I could not accommodate him living with me indefinitely. Jason became upset, insisting that staying with me was the most practical option. He claimed that I wouldn't mind, and that family should always help each other. I tried to reason with him, explaining that my apartment is small, my work requires quiet and focus, and living together for an extended period would be stressful for both of us. I also expressed concerns about my dog, who is anxious around new people and might not handle months of visitors well. Jason accused me of being selfish and said that I was choosing comfort over family. The situation escalated when he involved our parents. They called me multiple times, saying that I should help my brother in his time of need, and that turning him away was cold and unkind. They reminded me of how they had supported me in the past when I had housing issues and implied that I owed Jason the same courtesy. I explained that I was offering alternative support, help finding housing, contributing financially, helping with moving, but they insisted that nothing short of letting him live with me was acceptable. Jason began pressuring me daily. He sent long texts describing his struggles, implying that I was making his life more difficult and that he felt abandoned by family. He suggested that staying with me would only be for a few weeks, but given his history of extended stays at other family members' homes, I was skeptical. When I reiterated my refusal, he accused me of being heartless and unloving. I also tried compromising in small ways. I offered to help him pack, drive him to view apartments, and assist with applications or deposits. I even offered to pay a portion of a short-term rental or a hotel if money was tight. Jason dismissed all of these alternatives, claiming that they were inconvenient or insufficient. He repeatedly insisted that living with me was the only viable solution. The tension has now affected my relationship with my parents and other family members. They keep asking why I won't do the right thing and seem to resent me for sticking to my boundaries. Some friends have told me that I am justified because hosting someone full-time in a small apartment, especially while working from home, is a reasonable boundary. Others suggest that family should come first and that I should try harder to accommodate him. I feel trapped because I want to support Jason and maintain a positive relationship, but I also have responsibilities to my work, my dog, and my mental health. Hosting him indefinitely would be highly stressful and could damage our relationship in the long term. I'm trying to help in ways that do not involve compromising my stability, but he and my parents seem unsatisfied with anything less than moving in. Recently, Jason hinted that he might show up at my apartment unannounced, and I'm worried about having to enforce boundaries in person. I fear this could escalate into conflict or even make me feel unsafe in my own home. At the same time, I feel guilty because I know he genuinely needs support. I don't want to be seen as uncaring or selfish. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother move into my apartment for an indefinite period, even though he claims he has nowhere else to go and my family believes I am being unkind. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after years of unresolved family issues. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I've practically held us together through some really tough times. My parents split when I was 12, and my younger sister, Emily, 28F, and I didn't have the easiest childhood. Mom was emotionally distant, Dad was sporadically present, and Emily often got away with things because she was the baby. I became the default adult, taking care of both of us in ways a 12-year-old shouldn't have to. This has led to a lot of resentment that I've tried to manage over the years, but it's always simmered under the surface. Fast forward to adulthood. I've built a pretty stable life. I have a good job, a home I love, and a social circle that feels like family sometimes. Emily has had a very different trajectory. She's always been spontaneous and sometimes reckless. She's also incredibly charming, which often masks the fact that she avoids responsibility. For example, she's had several jobs she quit suddenly, moved apartments without notice, and borrowed money from family and friends without repaying it for years. I've tried to be supportive without enabling her, which has sometimes made me come off as harsh to her. 2 years ago, Emily got engaged to her boyfriend, Mark, 30M. When she told me, I was genuinely happy for her, even though I had reservations about Mark. He seems like a nice guy, but he's extremely laid back in a way that sometimes translates to unreliable. I decided I would try to be supportive and let her excitement carry the moment. When she started talking about the wedding, things quickly became complicated. Emily immediately assumed that I would host the wedding at my house. Our family is not wealthy, but my house is the nicest one among all siblings. I don't have a huge place, but it's modern, has a decent backyard, and could technically accommodate 50 to 60 people for a party. Emily started inviting friends and extended family before we even discussed logistics. When I asked her about her expectations, she said, "Oh, it's your house. You'll figure it out. You always handle things anyway." That hit me hard. I've spent decades handling things, often at my own expense, and I started to feel resentment. Hosting a wedding is a huge responsibility, especially when the guest list included people I barely know and people I actively don't get along with. I brought this up with her gently, saying, "I don't think I can host this. It's too much." She laughed it off, saying I was being dramatic. We eventually had a more serious conversation where she asked, point blank, "Are you refusing to host my wedding?" I explained that my house isn't equipped for that size of a gathering, that it's a personal space I value, and that the stress of hosting something so big would be overwhelming. I also brought up the history of her expecting me to take care of things whenever there's trouble in the family. I try to frame it in terms of logistics and emotional health rather than accusation, but Emily got very defensive. She said I was selfish and holding grudges and accused me of not loving her enough to help. This blew up into an argument that lasted a week, with texts and emails flying back and forth. She brought up our childhood, saying I always controlled everything and never let her have fun, which is partially true, but I felt like she was twisting the narrative to guilt me into hosting the wedding. After a week of tension, I suggested alternative venues. I even offered to help with planning in other ways, like coordinating vendors or helping with decorations, but she brushed it off. She said it wouldn't feel the same if it wasn't at my house and implied that our family's image would be tarnished if we didn't do it this way. At that point, I realized that no compromise would satisfy her. I told her again I wouldn't host the wedding and that if she wanted my help, it would have to be in ways that didn't involve opening my home and taking on full responsibility. She responded by going silent for 2 weeks. During that silence, my parents got involved. They tried to mediate, suggesting that I just help out this one time, and implying that Emily might cut off family contact if I refused. I tried to explain that I was willing to support in other ways, but the focus was entirely on my house. At this point, I felt cornered. I don't think it's unreasonable to say no, but the guilt trips were intense. I also started reflecting on our past, and I realized that Emily has a pattern of expecting others to sacrifice for her. I love her, but I don't think I'm obligated to host her wedding, especially when the relationship has always been a bit one-sided emotionally. Eventually, I sent a detailed message explaining my boundaries. I said that I couldn't host the wedding, that would be too stressful and would impact my own life, and that I would help in other practical ways. I emphasized that this wasn't about punishing her or holding grudges, but about taking care of myself. Emily responded with a text that said, "If you can't be there for me in this way, maybe you shouldn't be involved at all." That was incredibly hurtful, but I didn't respond immediately. I spent a few days thinking about the bigger picture, our family dynamics, my own mental health, and the fact that I can't keep sacrificing myself to meet her expectations. Eventually, I replied, saying that I still want to be involved in her wedding in ways that are realistic and healthy for me. I offered to help with planning certain aspects remotely, attend the wedding, and even assist with minor financial contributions if needed. She hasn't responded yet, and honestly, I don't know what to expect. Part of me feels justified in setting these boundaries, and another part worries I'm being unfair to her because this is supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime event. The family seems split. Some relatives support me and understand my reasons, while others think I'm being cold and selfish. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house after years of carrying the emotional and logistical load for our family. Even though it has caused a major rift between us, I'm genuinely trying to balance love for my sister with taking care of my own mental health, but I can't help but feel like I might be seen as the villain here.